victims are crushed. They collapsed. They fall under his strength. He says to himself, God has forgotten. He covers his face and never sees. Arise, O Lord, lift up your hand, O God. Do not forget the helpless. Why does the wicked man revile God? Why does he say to himself, he won't call me to account? But you, O God, do see trouble and grief. You consider it and take it in hand. The victim commits himself to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evil man. Call him to account for his wickedness. That would not be found out. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land. You hear, O Lord, the desire of the afflicted. You encourage them, and you listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and oppressed, in order that man, who is of the earth, may terrify no more. And so we see that one man is like of the earth. He's using stones and he's using dirt and things of that to throw at David and those things. And that's the part with these people that, may come to you with abusive words or abusive things to anger or upset you, are trying to draw you in. They're trying to trick you and draw you into their own schemes to create a want for hatred. A want to hate this group of people or this group of people or whatever it is, and to get you engaged into the battle or into the war. And so we kind of see there in Star Wars, what is the force, who is the good force always with? In all the Star Wars movies, it's always with those who are being oppressed, and the fatherless, the helpless, the poor, and all of those things. And those are God's people. He listens to those who are being afflicted. And so if we're cursing somebody and inflicting pains and sufferings on somebody, we could be considered like the wicked man or the wicked person. That's the thing in Star Wars, the Darth Vader. They all know of the Force and everything, but they use it to hurt people and to condemn people. One of the greatest lines in the entire movie, and in all movies, the greatest line probably ever spoken was when the Asian girl is telling the pilot, and they're right in the midst of the battle, and she's saying that it's not about the battle. It's about preserving the life of those you love. And that's what it's always about. And that's what God is saying. And that's what David is saying. It's not about the war. It's not about fighting or engaging with the enemy. It's about preserving those you love. And that's what would Jesus do? Well, he would do everything he could to preserve those he loved, even if what they were doing was wrong or bad. And so David has a decree out to everybody that although he wants to capture Absalom and bring Absalom in, under no circumstances are they allowed to kill Absalom. And so David preserved the things he loves. Even though this person is doing all the wrong things, it's still his son. It's still his flesh and blood. It's still someone who he loves. So he chooses, instead of engaging in this war, to preserve that which he loves. And so we hear in the beginning, why, O Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? And to preserve those whom he loves. God doesn't wish to be our enemy. And he doesn't wish for us to be an enemy to anyone. And so we are to love our enemies. We are not to engage in war or battle with them, but to love them, to forgive them. He says, and here again, Jesus says it's better to enter the kingdom of heaven missing your foot or your hand or your body parts than to enter into hell, even for a moment. It's better to go and have half a body than a full body in hell. And here's again is why we want to always ask ourselves every day, no matter what we're doing, no matter what the situation is Jesus, what would you do? I mean, it's very tough for a wicked man to pray. The only way we can talk to Jesus is through prayer and by prayer. So take the time. And he says, and here's where David, being an ambassador of Jesus Christ or a representation of Jesus, why was Luke all afraid when the new girl comes along and goes and sees, there's the dark side was there on the island that they were at, right? And the girl goes right in with no fear. And if you go way back in the story, Yoda says Luke would be a terrible Jedi because he's full of fear. And Yoda says, I don't even want to train this guy. He's full of fear. And then we see the girl comes, and Luke Skywalker is totally afraid of the girl because the girl has no fear. He never met a real Jedi before. He was a fake one. He wasn't born to be a Jedi. They kind of took him and made him into one. But where this girl, she's the real deal, right? Because she has no fear. And this is what God removes from us, is all fear. Love, inside of perfect love, inside of God's perfect force or being, there's absolutely no fear of anything, of nothing, not even the devil himself. And for people who don't know God, they're afraid. How can you identify somebody who hasn't met or know God? They're afraid. They're angry. They're frustrated. They're upset. They're always trying to blame everybody else on earth for the problems they have. The man of Benjaminite was from the clan of Saul, and he's blaming David for all his problems. But it was God, and whomever God anoints, right? So we see there in the book or the movie, they burned down that tree. And inside that tree was all the scriptures and all the stuff and, like the Bible or ancient teachings of the Jedis, and they burned it down, and we don't need that stuff. And why didn't they need that stuff? Because it is the Holy Spirit of God that chooses us or anoints us. And God will always choose love and those who are fearless. And it doesn't matter what problems arise or what's going on in the world. Good will always arise at the right time. So this is what David's answer. Where did David get that refreshment as they were there? And he was all exhausted from being cursed all day and pelted with stones and dirt and all that. And he gets there. And where does that refreshment come from? And we see right here that here's the refreshment. All right, it says, in the Lord I take refuge. How then can you say to me, flee like a bird to your mountain? Right? So that was the guys, they were like, hey, we're going to whack this guy's head off to get him to shut up. And David says, if the Lord told him to curse me, then just let him be. Why should I flee or run like the birds to the mountains? For look, the wicked bend their bows. They set their arrows against the strings to shoot from the shadows at the upright in heart. Right? Because David, being upright in heart, he's avoiding the battle. He's preserving that which he loves instead of destroying it. When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. You are the temple of God. The Lord is on his heavenly throne. The kingdom of heaven is within you. He observes the sons of men. He examines them. The Lord examines the righteous, but the wicked and those who love violence, his soul hates. On the wicked, he will rain fiery coals and burning sulfur. A scorching wind will be their lot. He whose walk is, for the Lord is righteous. He loves justice. And it is the upright men who will see his face. Who will see his face. So that's the thing with David and all that. It was the upright men who were following him. And so Jesus says to us and says to us all is come and follow me. Follow his instructions, follow his way of life. And if you're not exactly sure what Jesus did throughout his life and the way he lived it, just open up the Bible and read it and get into it and ask God for wisdom. Ask God to unveil to you what he would do if he was in that situation. You know, what would God do when the evil man comes to take your coat? Well, Jesus would give them his shirt. Right? So if the enemy, say today we want to make the gay person our enemy, right? And all them gays are detestable and disgusting and to God. And this gay man comes and asks you to bake him a cake. What would Jesus do? He would bake that cake, and not only bake that cake, he would give that cake with frosting. Right? Because he's going to give his shirt as well. So what is some of the teachings of Jesus? Whoever comes to you and asks of you, give to them. So Ziba asked David, when is the Lord going to restore my father or my grandfather's kingdom back to me? And he says, today. He asked him, and today he gives that kingdom back to him. Right? So in that, we bless those who bless us. And don't go cursing those who curse you, but rather bless them. Because by blessing them, by giving that Benjaminite life, right? In the end, you're piling up fiery coals on their head. God hates violence. And we see with David that. Why did David avoid violence? He avoided violence with his son. He avoids violence with the man who comes out to curse him. Because the Lord was in this temple. Right? The Lord was his ruler, his master. So we see there in the Star Wars, who is your master, right? And whoever's mastering over us, whatever's mastering over our lives, whether it could be the dark side or the light, that's what shows who we truly are. We can all, and many people may claim to know God, know Jesus, but it's the person who loves his neighbor, who loves his enemy, who blesses those who curse him. That's the one who is walking in the light. And why is David, what is it all about? Well, the Lord is in the temple. And if the Lord is within you, you're going to be just like the Lord, just like Jesus. And so that's what David says is throughout all the Psalms, as I pray and pray, God, teach me your ways, so I will not be the wicked man. Because David murdered, David lied, David did a lot of sins. But David never abandoned his God in that. So we want to always remember that. Ask Jesus, and you can ask Jesus wherever you are, because he's a living spirit, just like the Force. It doesn't matter if we're on this planet or that planet, this place or that place. He's forever present, and wherever that is. And even at the end of the movie, we see there's little kids grabbing, floating the sweeper over to them, and there was nobody there to teach them. Yet they still had knowledge of the Force. And for us, we're not talking about the Force. We're talking about God. We forever have knowledge of love, and they want to do what is right. So there's going to come a time in your lives when you're going to want to stand up for justice and righteousness. And remember that justice and righteousness is always standing up for those who are weaker than yourself. Weaker in faith, weaker in action, weaker in character. We're going to stand up for the fatherless, the homeless, the whatever it is, or the sick, So Jesus tells us all and reminds us all that whatever we do to the least is done to him and for him. So every story in the Bible has something to do with how to walk with good character. And every story in the Bible has an answer to whatever question you may have had. These people is told throughout many hundreds of different people throughout this time. And they all had the same problems we have today. And so remember that and be sympathetic towards those who are seeking to curse you. The only reason they're seeking to curse you is because they don't know who God is. Had they known who God was, they would not do that. Because they recognize and understand we are all brothers. And whatever we do to each other, we're literally doing it to our own flesh, our own body, whoever it may be. We're all members in one body, the body of Jesus Christ. And so keep that in mind as you go through these next year, God will bless you if you bless them. And who is them? And Israel is a bunch of stiff-necked, unbelieving, violent, nasty people. And so that's who we are to bless. The unbelievers or wicked, right? Can't go lashing out in anger and revenge, the seek for revenge. So keep that in mind. It will keep you out of trouble. It's the old saying that the guy who throws the second punch always gets in trouble, even though you didn't start the fight or nothing. But they always hear the first one and they look and they see the second one. And the guy who throws the second punch always gets in trouble. So remember that it's not always the wisest choice. Alright? So the greatest line ever, keep this in your thoughts as before you decide to either quit your job or give up on something or give up on yourself, that it's greater to preserve your life, preserve the things that are good, preserve the things that you love, rather than engage in a war you cannot win. You have no control over. Okay? You don't want to be like Absalom. Absalom was trekking around looking for David and was going to kill him, and he's riding on his donkey. They didn't ride horses yet. They weren't even riding camels yet. They're riding donkeys. And he's riding along on his donkey, and he gets caught, and he's running from the battle, and his head gets caught in between a tree. It has a fork, and right in there, it just goes and sticks him in the tree, and David's soldiers find him, and he's dangling from the tree, but he's still alive. And at any time, they could have took him right to David alive. But Joab, one of David's leaders of his army, kills him. And David was extremely angry and upset because they had only one rule, only one law, only one command to follow. And that was, do not kill Absalom. Do not hurt him. And they did. And that's the thing is, God repays each of us by our own measure. He who murders will be considered violent, unloving, and cut off from heaven. And that includes murdering another person's character through slander and gossip. We're not to be gossiping or slandering other people. And so every bit of dirt we throw on them, we're actually throwing that dirt on ourselves, because we have to and must love our neighbor in the same way we wish to be loved. Right? Even though they may come at us with angry and abusive words, whoever it may be, we love in the way we wish to be loved, not in the way we wished God would destroy. So if we're asking God to destroy, and God's not destroying, we're fighting with God, because here's the part that